Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the second part of a two-part series looking at neurodiversity in the workplace. In our first webinar, we had a panel of businesses and specialists talking about how to be a company that maintains a neurodiverse, inclusive environment. Today, we are looking at the people's personal journeys of neurodiversity, from leaving school to moving into the workplace. Right, without further ado, I'm going to go across to the panel. So first of all, we've got our very own Jess Peacey, who a lot of you will know and love from our socials and other videos. And we also have our long-term friend, Matt, aka the Wobbly Gamer. Yeah. Also not with us right now, but later we'll be going to Rhiannon, who is an 18-year-old with neurodiversity looking to moving into the workplace. And we're going to be talking to her about her challenges and the things that she's doing to prepare for that next stage in her life. So first things, I'm going to go to each of the panel and ask them to introduce themselves. So Matt, can I come to you first, mate?
Hello, hi everyone, I am Matt, also more commonly known as the Wobbly Gamer these days. I am a visually impaired content creator and accessibility consultant who works inside the video games industry, currently as a freelance consultant. I work with some of the major names in gaming, EA Sports, Xbox, PlayStation, to make their games more accessible for disabled gamers, as well as advocating on social media and everywhere I can put my face, basically, at the moment.
Thank you, Matt. And over to the one and only Jess.
Hello, I'm Jess, the fun one, adaptivity. Also the genius behind the marketing as well. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thanks both. Let's move on to the first question. And if you don't mind, Wobbles, I'm going to come over to you. Can you talk a little bit about your journey through employment and how it's gotten you to where you are now? Because it's quite a impressive, but also quite an interesting route.
So I started off at 16 wanting to be working hotels and kitchens. So I then jumped into hospitality quite quickly, working my way up, moving from where I grew up in Lincoln to Suffolk, to quite a prestigious hotel at the time, which was pushing for 3 rosettes, all while still being me. It worked very much well for me being in hospitality because it was always quick. I'm always fidgeting. I like to be on the go 24/7 doing something. If I'm not doing something, I'm asleep. That's what my wife says. If you're not keeping him entertained, he's asleep. That's how I operate.
So it's quite interesting, Wobbles, in the sense that, you know, you've gone from what is a very, very hard profession stroke trade within caterer, and you're now, you know, one of the leading disability advocates for gaming in the country. How do you go from, you know, I want to be a chef to where you are now? Was it a case of needs must, or you knew exactly what you wanted to do and that's what you've gone and done?
I left hospitality for a number of reasons, just the stress and everything, having a child, not coping with it at the time because I was just too stressed. And when I just get too stressed, I just capitulate, like quite a lot of people with neurodivergency. We just go into a bubble, a shell, and hide. And that kind of happened. So I was like, right, I need to get out of the hospitality industry. And at the time, I was volunteering in the charity sector for visually impaired people. I went and worked in the charity sector, and I went from a job that was 100 miles an hour to a job that was 5 miles an hour. And I've settled in quite well, had a manager that understood me quite well, understood my working practices, and then he left and someone came in who I didn't see eye to eye with. He had and unfortunately I did the neurodivergent thing that Wobbles does quite a lot, and that's I spoke before I thought. And 6 months after that incident, I found myself being made redundant after working in the family sector while still doing the accessibility stuff on the side. So that job was like 4 days a week. So I had plenty of spare time to carry on the accessibility. And as I got made redundant, I'd just been invited to Canada by EA. I was just getting contracts. So like, as you can imagine, games companies coming to me, I was getting recognized inside the accessibility space as someone who knew what he was on about. He wasn't just ranting about text size on Twitter anymore. And I sat there and was like to the wife, looking for jobs again, charity sector jobs. And my wife kind of came over and went, "You've not been happy since you left hospitality properly. Why don't you kind of," it's a really bad superhero arc, I describe it, because she kind of came in and was like, "Why don't you give the Wobbly Gamer a go?" And I realized quite quickly that actually the best thing for me to do was be self-employed in something that I love, because it kind of meant I could keep myself on track while also doing what I enjoyed.
One of the interesting things that you just mentioned, I mean, when I started work, you didn't have such thing as home working. You know, you went into the office, you did your job, you know, for whatever hours you needed to do it, and then you went home, and there wasn't an option for anything else. And that can be very difficult for people neurodiverse, whether that's working in an office with a lot of other people, because we're very fond of our open plan offices now, through to being completely isolated at home. You've obviously got a role at the moment where you're at home all the time compared to where you were with sort of the catering. Has that affected you at all? Has that been a difficult transition? How have you dealt with that?
I can force myself to work if I'm giving myself a strict deadline, or I'm given a strict deadline. Right, I have to work at 9 o'clock in the day till 3 o'clock in the afternoon today. I have to do a normal person's hours. But another thing is that works really well is I can sit here at 11 o'clock at night when I can't sleep and go, "I'm going to work for 2 hours." And people will be like, "Oh my God, that's really bad working practice," which it is, but it works for me. And you find out very quickly that you do things that work for yourself. And whether this sounds like I work for an hour, then play FIFA for half an hour.
Yeah, I have to say that the working schedules is interesting, and it's something that we covered back in webinar 1, was if somebody doesn't operate within a standard timing frame, you know, 9 to 5, you've got to do your 8 hours, you know, have your half an hour lunch, and they need to be a little bit more flexible than that. Actually, that can be a good thing. You just need to look at the job with regards to what's more important. Is it more important that the person is sat at their desk, or is it more important that they're very productive and they deliver what they need to deliver? And, you know, that I think there's been a big shift between time in the office versus actual output.
Yeah.
And I think that can be very positive for people with neurodivergency.
I can achieve more in 2 hours when I am focused than 90% of non-neurodivergent people could achieve in 8 hours when they're not focused.
Yeah, cool. Right. Well, thanks for that, Matt. If you don't mind, Jess, I'm going to come to you now. But you were already working when you started to consider, or people started to talk to you about what neurodivergency was, and some of the attributes that makes up Jess could sort of fall into that category. So how has that affected you within your work? And, you know, are there things that you look back on and go, if I'd known what I know now, things could have been a lot simpler?
Yeah, so before like joining Adapt, I knew what autism was, I knew what ADHD was, but I just never really like thought about the characteristics of it. And it's just like, I know people who've got it, that's fine. Just kind of moved on with my life. And then I started working here and then like some of our clients, and I'm like, something ain't right here. It just kind of explains a lot of how I've like grown up basically. And like looking back on things, especially at school, it makes a lot more sense now. And yeah, like even things like just in 3.5 years-ish I've been working here, like I've definitely noticed things now that actually are, yeah, like neurodivergency, and not just because I'm lazy or stupid.
Yeah, that's a term that we all use a lot. Oh God, I'm so stupid. Why do I do that? But that's always far from the truth. So how did you find It's a bit of a loaded question, really, isn't it? Because you're obviously working for Adapt IT, but when you were going through the initial recruitment process, how did the way that you operate actually affect that? What was your thoughts with regards to, oh, I've now got to go and meet people I don't know, I'm going well out of my comfort circle in the sense of I've not really done this kind of thing before. What was going through your head when you sort of came to the interview really for something that you wanted to do?
So yeah, it was just off the back of like the COVID lockdowns and stuff. So through that point, I turned 18 and I was on universal credit to just kind of help my mum with bills and stuff. And then once it all kind of opened up again, I was working with them, and they had this Kickstart scheme where basically people between 18 and 24 were being given like more opportunities to get back into work or get into work. And that was how I came across you guys. I just panicked my entire way. Like, I walked to the job centre, I was just panicked, and Alan from the job centre was sat there like kind of trying to talk to me. And the second I got there and sat in front of you, I feel like I just kind of winged it, but in a sense that all the anxiety kind of just left. And you say this to me quite a lot when we do events and that. I'm always telling you like, oh, I can't do it, I'm too scared, blah, blah, blah. But when I get there, I just talk to people and it's like nothing ever happened. And it was kind of like the same when it came to like the interview process.
That's really cool. It is interesting. So any of you that have ever spoken to Jess, you would never think there's any nerves because she is just naturally a people person. And I don't think there's anybody that she can't get on with.
No, Disability Expo was when I first met Jess at an event, and nerves is not a word I would have used to describe you at that event at all.
So
my secret power.
Has there been times when you've kind of felt that actually I need this support in order to be able to do what I want to do, but that support's not been there, specifically related to, being able to get into a job that you wanted or getting to, the ideal place of where you want to be? Can I start with you, Wobbles, on that one?
For me, it's really difficult, like, because I've always worked in an industry normally where there isn't any help for anyone. In hospitality, you have to be, especially when you get to management level, you're in charge. You've got to be there if issues arise, and you don't have to. Honestly, you don't have time to think about it. And then I did go to the charity sector, like I said, and it slowed down from 100 miles an hour to 5 miles an hour. And my first manager, whatever the CEO of the charity at the time, was phenomenal. His door was always open, and it was like you could go and chat to him. And that's where I struggled with the person that took over, because I was like, I didn't know who to turn to, and there wasn't a help inside the company set up for me to. There was other people that were in the management team and stuff that were phenomenal, but they didn't work in my department. And it was like, they were like, I can't make that decision for you because it's not but I can offer you a bit of advice, but you need a definitive answer, so you're gonna have to wait a week to speak to someone. I'm like, I can't wait a week. It's not how I operate.
Got you. So Jess, coming back to you again. So obviously you had some jobs and things prior to Adapt IT, and as you said, your journey of discovery has really been over the past sort of 4 years as such. Are there things within your previous roles that, had you known what you know now, there could have been things in place to help you with, integration, confidence, learning your trade, your profession, or whatever it is you felt that you wanted to do at that time?
Yeah, so I've just literally worked in retail beforehand. Like, I had 2 jobs because I started here when I was 19, so not had much, and then obviously COVID, so yeah, really not had much experience besides this. But yeah, I worked in retail, and obviously it was a lot of dealing with people, which obviously I was always scared and quite try to avoid it really, but obviously you can't if you're on checkouts, for example. You kind of have to speak to people, which was fine. But there's this, the first place I worked at, they had this kind of weird unspoken rule that everybody knew about but me, and it just really threw me. So if you were on a shift from 12 to 4, didn't actually mean you could go home at 4. They wanted you to stay until close, but they did, your shift time was 12 till 4. So I frequently got in arguments with them about it, because it's like, you're saying I'm working till 4, but I can't leave at 4. And it made sense to everyone but me, and I was like, what? Yeah, and I frequently had like words with them, and they weren't exactly the most pleased people, but it's like, why are you telling me I can go at this time when I can't? And it's, yeah, it's quite annoying, really.
That's literal thinking, and I'd be the same. If someone said to me on the bit of paper, your shift's 12 till 4, and it got to 4 o'clock, and people go, "Oh, you're not going anywhere." I'd be like, "But what? Hold on, no. You told me I'm working till 4." It's literal thinking. You need it in front of you. Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. To me, it was like common sense. Like, why are you telling me I could work until 4, but I can't? But everyone else looked at me like I was an alien. I had like 3 heads.
My mum, it's a story my mum and dad tell about me all the time, because I still do it to this day. If you tell me to put the kettle on, I won't make you a cup of tea, and I do it. I just walk in, flick the kettle on, and walk out the room. And it's things, and that's what mum and dad say. You kind of, and my wife's got so much better at it, because she didn't get it to start with. No one gets it. It's like he thinks literally.
Yep.
If you say to him, "We're going out to dinner, I will pick you up at 6:45," you pick him up at 6:45.
Yeah.
You don't, and that because you've told him you'll be there at 6:45. You can't. He gets literally, it will stress him out to the nth degree if you're there at 6:50, and loads of things like that. But the kettle one is so true.
I have to say, listening to both of you, the thing that gets me more than, oh, we'll have a meeting and it'll be about this time. And it's like, well, hang on. If we're having a meeting, it's got to start at a specific time. And there's no, you don't go after that time either. And it just freaks the hell out of me. It's annoying.
Yeah.
Doctors are the worst for that. Like, they'll be like, oh yeah, we'll give you a call at some point today, and like in the afternoon, and then I will sit there panicking at like 120 heart rate, and it's just until it happens. But I just will stress until the very second that phone rings.
It's like you've said. I don't do issues. No, but even at my own. So if I'm streaming, so today I'm streaming at some point, and I will have a literal thought path in my head of my day, and then if you were to then go, "Oh, we need to push back our meeting this morning until 12:30," I would instantly be like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?"
Yeah.
And panic. It's a 30-second panic. It's not like I'm going to have a full meltdown and throw things around the room, but there is that internal 30-second panic of, I've got to rearrange my whole day. I don't. There's nothing set in stone. I'm not going to die if I've not done the washing up by 10:30, or I've not gone live by 3 o'clock. But in my head, I'm like, right, and then I'm the worst one for it. If you message me in the morning, I'll be like, yeah, I'll stream at 2 o'clock. Then by 2 o'clock, actually, I'll be streaming by 4 o'clock because I've got distracted. The laundry that's supposed to take 20 minutes actually took 4 hours because I've got distracted.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. So I get up, I have to have a shower, I have to clean my teeth, and then I have to be out of the door. And I don't know what it is, but if I'm getting up and I've got to be somewhere like work, it's got to happen in that order. That one of the really strange things at night, I go to bed, I clean my teeth, I get into bed, but I have to be the person to clean their teeth first, or I can't sleep for whatever reason. It's just completely stupid, but what does it matter? It has no effect on anything, but it does play. Cool. So going back to interviews, so this is going back to the time when it's slightly different for you, Wobbles, because obviously you interview yourself, but there's a lot of different ways that people are interviewed now, and a lot of interviews are all online. There's no face-to-face interviews now. How do you think that can affect people with neurodiversity, given the fact that it's so impersonal, you don't necessarily have that connection? And for some people that's good, but for a lot of people it isn't.
I hate it. I would rather, if any event, can be in person, I would much rather it be in person than online. Just because I can't. You've got a weird. It's not a sixth sense, but I can read people a lot better in person, and I can pick up on even the feeling in the air in the room. You walk in, and sometimes it's like, but on PC you don't get that, and I don't like it so much. And interviews are very much done differently in every different industry. So when you do an interview in hospitality, it's like a chat, it's a conversation. You never formally walk into a room and there's two people opposite the table. You're sitting normally in a restaurant with a cup of coffee chatting to people about what you've done or where you've worked in the past. There's never formal. They don't sit there and go, if all of our systems crash tomorrow, what would you do? You do, oh, panic.
Yeah.
No, you don't get that. You get a chat, an informal chat. And then I went into the charity sector and it was like that. It was full formal interviews. And my first one I did online and I did get the job, but I detested doing it online. So I was like, this isn't normal. It was just after COVID and everyone was doing 50% work or 75% from home, 25% in the office with spatial distancing. And so they were like, we can't put four of us in a room for an interview, so we have to do it online. And I was like, oh, and I didn't like it at all because I couldn't judge the people in the room I was talking to. I didn't know if they were relaxed because you can't see their hands, you can't see their body shape because all you see is their shoulders. And I'm like, I don't know if they're okay with me making a joke or if I don't like it.
Cool. Jess, what sort of interview process do you prefer?
So I've only ever been interviewed in person, so I don't know what the virtual thing's like, but I feel like I would feel like I quite like it actually, like just being able to be in a space that I'm comfortable in and that I know, and like have something nearby that I can like hold on to, just if I'm getting like a bit stressy. Then yeah, like just being able to be in like a familiar place, I think that was quite like helpful because interviews are always stressful. It doesn't matter who you are, you're always going to be like quite nervous for it and like worrying about what they're going to think of you and all of that. So that I think by taking out the stress of being somewhere or going somewhere you don't know and being sat. So the interview with you, you and Jane, it was actually a table with two people sat in front of me, and that it was quite scary. But yeah, once we got talking, it was fine. But just being in a different environment, it was quite nerve-wracking as well.
It was even worse than that because it was just after COVID. We had a plastic screen between us as well. So, it wasn't just a really scary interview. It was almost like,
Prison interview when you're talking to your lawyer.
Incarcerated. And it definitely wasn't conducive to a good interview situation, really.
Yeah, I felt like I was going to be arrested.
One thing that always got me is one thing I get tripped up on is if somebody throws a curveball question at you and wants you to answer it straight away. I always need a little bit of time to think things through and then I can go with it, especially with a little preparation. And the interview techniques of, oh, I'm going to throw these questions at you immediately, because you don't necessarily sort of respond immediately and you get a bit muddled and it all goes, I think interviews should take that into account a little bit more. Granted, there are a lot of jobs where you need to think on your feet, but I've never been in a situation with a role where somebody's gone, you need to answer this, go, 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 tell me immediately, ever. So why do we do that in interviews?
Unless you are dealing with someone that's in a hospital room and you are trying to save their life.
Yes.
There is no, and even in hospitality, I've been in some hairy situations where you're doing someone's wedding and a shed outside sets on fire because a firework hit it. That's once in 15 years in hospitality, I had a situation like that. It's not ever going to be. So I think it's such a stupid interview technique that is just there to not even put people under pressure. It's to just, I think it's just belittling people and it's so pointless.
Yeah. So I'm now going to go on to well, I always think it's the dreaded topic, because when I burn out in a big way and I generally go down. But, I think for everybody, burnout is a big problem. I think for neurodivergent people, it can take a much bigger impact. I mean, I melt down, pure and simple. I get loud, I start shouting, I get really angry, not at anything in particular, but more myself. And that's it, I'm wiped out for days and I can't do anything really effective. So, do you have any tips for people in the workplace that, you know, have neurodivergency and how to manage situations where you're overloaded, or you feel like you're going to be overloaded, or you're going into a situation where it could force you into that kind of overloaded situation? Can I start with, I'll go to Jess this time. Sorry, Jess.
My turn to be first now. Yeah, I kind of get similar to you. Like if I'm really, I get quite tired and like just really snappy and irritable, and like just on a warpath really. um, at home, obviously, it's quite a lot easier to take yourself away and like just sit in a dark room and just not really deal with anything. But if you're in an office, you kind of have to like be there. But like, yeah, just allowing yourself to take a few minutes and like get a drink, make a cup of tea, something like that. Just, it may sound extremely boring, but you don't really have to think about it, and it doesn't really like add to it. Then you get a nice tea at the end of it. And like just, yeah, self-care really is, so like you can get like apps and software and things like that that can help you with it. So there's one that I've used in the past called Finch, and it's like you put down all of the tasks you need to do for the day, and when you tick it off, your pet gets happy and goes on an adventure. And it's just stupid things like that, just kind of like gamify it and like make it all cute and just make tasks. It gives you that little bit of, is it dopamine? For like you tick off a task and then you get a pet that's happy. It's great. It's like a little Tamagotchi.
That's cool. Thank you, Jess. Wobbles.
I think, you know, Simon, me personally, I am a big advocate on people having time to themselves. I say it to you all the time, don't I?
Yeah, you do.
And I am, because I burnt myself out and I hit rock bottom. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt and the scars to prove it. And so I am massive on people having their own time and saying no. Even as someone that's self-employed, relies on contract work for income, I would still say no to something that people would go, why are you saying no to that? It's money. And I'm like, because I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt from saying yes to everything, putting far too much pressure on yourself, your family and the people around you. And when you're neurodivergent, when you bang, you go with a bang.
Bang.
You don't. And so I very much, one of the reasons I went self-employed and been doing it for 3 years, because I can say that I'm soon moving back into full-time employment. And you know that. And it's because I've taken 3-4 years. It's taken me 3 or 4 years to get to a point where I've now gone, actually, I think I can do it again. And because I've given myself so much time to be myself, to get myself back to where I want to be, and that's through having time off and saying no and putting myself first rather than income. Because when I found out I could go blind, my biggest worry was my family, and I was like, I need to make as much money as I physically can in 10 years before that happens. And that was the worst choice of my life, because I put myself into so much pressure. I didn't just go bang, I capitulated like a nuke. And it has taken me 4 years to get over it. And I'm now at a point where I'm so big. I say to you all the time, don't I? I'm like, you just have to sometimes say no and put time for yourself first.
Yeah.
Whether that's a no to a 10-minute meeting in the morning because you can't deal with someone in the morning because you've slept badly the night before, or it's no to a contract that's worth quite a lot of money because you can see yourself 2 years down the line still struggling with that contract. You've got to be willing to say no. And it takes a lot of confidence to get yourself to that point, and a lot of understanding. And when you're working with someone that's neurodivergent, unfortunately, sometimes they don't have that understanding yet. And like you've said to yourselves, you will both go bang at some point, because I've been neurodivergent since the day I was born. I've had parents, luckily, that understand it more than most because of the work they did. And I was taught very quickly that
Mm.
you're different, you operate differently, and you've got to be willing to understand that. And even I went bang, and I mean, I went bang, bang. And it's taken me 3-4 years to kind of go through a massive journey of myself and the Wobbly Gamer, of confidence, of realizing that what's best for me as a person, what's best for my family, what's best for my little boy.
Yeah.
And now I'm actually got to a point where I've gone, now I can go back into full-time work. And like you've said, yeah, you can go with a bang, but it's about saying no. It's about realizing you do need to take yourself away from situations, and you do need to maybe just go, all right, after next week, I'm having a week off. And I know it's probably not the best time, but otherwise what's going to happen is I'm going to have not take that week off, and then I'm going to need 4 weeks off.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's important, and I think that's something that was discussed in Tuesday's webinar, was very much around, you know, as a neurodivergent person, you need to know yourself. I have to say that's very, very difficult, especially when you're at the beginning of the career, because you know, even the age I am, there are still things I'm learning about myself that I didn't know or didn't really realize. But you know, we are at the age of, oh, it's 10 to the hour, you need to stand up for 2 minutes. And I think when it comes to neurodivergency, the ability to be able to go, you know what, I'm going to have to leave the room right now for 10 minutes. I will be right back. Should also become a sort of common thing, rather than being sat in a 12-hour meeting talking about what you're going to do in the next meeting, which happens an awful lot. Well, we just had an amazing discussion with 3 of our panel, covering myself, Matt, aka Wobbles, and Jess, looking at work and interviews and how neurodiversity can affect you, or the things you need in order to feel more comfortable in the workplace. We're now in a really good place, and I am pleased to introduce Rhiannon Cowan-Jones, who has just turned 18, is in at the beginning of her career and moving into that. And we thought we would have a discussion around her experiences, the things that she is concerned about, the things she's really excited about going into the workplace. And we're also accompanied by our friend and regular attendee in our webinars, Mike Cowan-Jones, OT extraordinaire, and of course co-host of the Positive Talks podcast. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Welcome to you too. Yeah. You see, we're having a nice, relaxed day today. We're enjoying all the webinars that you're doing and all the chats, and it's great to be part of this. So, I mean, awesome. One of the things we were talking about, wasn't it, Rhiannon, is that idea of about having to grow up and get into the workplace. I know that's something which you've struggled a bit with, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I was going to say that's quite interesting. I mean, we all joke about, I mean, getting older is mandatory, but growing up is optional. And I definitely live by that rule. But what is it about that feeling of having to grow up and become an adult that, you know, you're struggling with, Rhiannon?
It's the thought of having to be an adult, do all the adult things like get a job, work out money, find somewhere to live, then paying rent or whatever, and like the prices of everything, and then travel. It's just all a lot, like very stressful, because I don't know about all of that, and I like knowing, and I don't know.
I think that's an interesting thing to mention, because I guess it's something that all of us feel. We never feel there's enough money. We never really know what our job is or what we want to do. It's very difficult. And those pressures, I think, extend to everybody. But I wonder if things are different being neurodiverse, perhaps as someone who's neurotypical. And I guess the closest I can think of is when you think about the next best thing, which is school. A lot of people enjoy school, undoubtedly, but not everybody does. And for you, I think school was a bit more challenging than perhaps some of your contemporaries had, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What's difficult about school?
Having to talk to people, having to make eye contact with teachers, having to show that I was listening by looking at a certain place and doing everything how I was told.
Yeah. And I guess that's one of the things with work, isn't it? That there's expectations of how you need to perform at work. There's expectations you need to be sociable. You need to talk to people. You need to make eye contact. Or do you? Do you need to make eye contact in work all the time? But if it's one of those expectations, then that's something you're going to be heading for. I think you've tried venturing a bit into the world of work, but you've been doing some voluntary service, I think, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's that been going?
I've been doing a couple hours every Sunday afternoon at an animal shelter.
How did you get involved in that? What was the process to be able to, start working with animals?
Well, I really love animals, so I knew I wanted a job to do with them. So I went to college for an animal care course. And on the animal care course, you had to have a work placement. So I looked into different places I could volunteer at, and that's how I got to the animal shelter I'm still volunteering at now.
So with regards to that process, so obviously you were doing a course in animal care, something that you're very passionate about, and then you find yourself in a situation where, oh, I've got to actually go and use this now, and I've actually got to do it. How did you feel about, oh, I've now got to go into the workplace and use this? Was it a scary thing?
It was scary as I didn't know what I had to do, how to do it, because like every place has different rules and everything, even with like working with the animals. Like every place is different, like clean them this way, clean them that way. And so you've got to follow the rules, and I just didn't know what to expect. So it was scary.
Yeah. So was the anxiety of guessing what it was going to be like worse than it actually was when you were there? Or did you still have challenges when you got to the place of work?
Okay, so
Okay.
I think so what were those challenges? I think some of the things that you found is that you explained what you needed to go for, and you explained about you're autistic and that being prepared and knowing what to do is really important, which some people got, but then not everybody did. And if they showed you a certain way of doing things and said you're going to be working with, for example, cats that particular week, and then they changed it at the last minute and put you working somewhere else, maybe with the dogs, which, okay, you enjoyed working with the dogs, but they're harder work and with different routines. And I think you were saying they do things like wasn't there an incident recently actually when you were walking the dogs and something cropped up because it was all muddy and they needed to be sorted in a certain way?
Yeah, they needed to be rinsed off after the walks, but I had never been shown how to.
So was it more of the unknown? So if it had been a bit more structured and they'd said, right, Rhiannon, for this role, this is what you're going to do. So we're going to start with cats today. This is the specific things we're going to do with the cats and what you're going to be responsible with. And then the next day, right, we're going to do something different today. We're working with dogs. Dogs need different care, they need different approaches, and sort of involved you in that planning for the day. That might have helped you a bit more with coping with the changes.
Yeah. It was mainly like the stress of not knowing what to do, how to do it correctly, and the fear that I might get in trouble if I do it wrong, and not being shown how to do it. So if someone had gone through and shown me and told me and demonstrated, then I think it would have been a lot easier.
Yeah. So what could they do to help you get ready for going into a workplace?
maybe have like a visit or two where I can like see the environment I'll be in where I can watch what other people are doing and learn and know that that is what I'm going to be doing. This is how I'm going to do it, and like be shown where everything is kept as well.
hmm
So if something isn't there, I can go get it to do what I need to do.
So an orientation. So that's very important to have that job role orientation so that you're comfortable with what you need to do, where you need to go, how you need to do things in order to be able to be comfortable that when you do start the job properly, that you're all set up. So that kind of brings me on to thinking about so how to deal with things, because when you're in a job, there's always going to be what I would call a curveball, something that suddenly appears out of the blue that needs to be dealt with. So how could we help you, for instance, be able to deal with those things that are inevitably going to come up?
It depends, like if it's like a situation you have to deal with right then and there, then it's like after dealing with it, give me time to calm down, have time to like de-stress and everything before having to do the rest of the work.
Mm.
It's like having a break afterwards to deal with everything that I otherwise would have dealt with before, like to calm myself down before, but because there was no time to deal with it, it's the time afterwards to deal with it.
So it's the recognition that the mental processing of being overstimulated or the sensory processing, whatever's going on, that high state of arousal, you need time to regulate again and come back down again afterwards.
Yeah.
Because you've dealt with that curveball, that unexpected thing that's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is interesting. So we were talking to Matt earlier. You met him previously at the Disability Expo, Rhiannon, and he was saying that when he went to an interview or a new situation, what he hated more than anything was having sudden questions being pushed on him. It wasn't that he couldn't answer the question. I'm exactly the same. If somebody goes, "Oh, what about this?" I'm like, "Oh," and I get really flustered. Whereas if somebody comes and asks you a question and gives you time to process that question,
it's
you
because
get a much better time.
Then you can think about what you want to say and everything, and it's not just you've just been asked a question. You need to think about how to answer, how to be professional, how to be kind, and how to word it all. And it's like that can't all happen in just a few seconds. Once the question has been asked, you kind of need some more time to process it.
So would, if you were going for an interview, would being given the questions prior to the interview be really useful for you?
Yeah.
Yes, if I think back to the interviews I've been in, it often felt like the person interviewing you was trying to catch you out. And that's not what an interview is supposed to be about. The best interviews are a two-way process where you're both checking out, is this the right role for me? And from their point of view, are you the right fit for our organisation? So the more prepared people can be in giving an answer, to me, it's obvious, but it seems traditional interviewees and interviewers don't think like that.
What type of interview would you prefer, and what would you like to see, Rhiannon, when you go into an interview?
Well, it depends on different stuff.
Okay.
Like, I think I'd prefer virtual if, like, not many people were home, so I knew I'd have, like, space and silence. If the internet was working and everything, like, it wasn't going to freeze.
Yeah, okay.
And everything.
That's a very good point. I tend to get a sort of an anxiety about, is it connected?
Yeah.
When you're waiting to be let into a meeting room, is it me or is it them? Yeah.
But like I also like in person because that means I can get out of the house. They don't see my background or anything. Like and I'm not then, if I'm stressed about the meeting and the interview, it went badly, it's not then that's a space in my house that reminds me of how that went and now I don't want to be there.
That's a good point. So there can be triggers, can't there? And
Yeah.
associated responses with different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of the way you operate, Rhiannon, do you have a type of job in mind? Obviously with animals and things, but how are you looking at the job market to find your perfect role?
The specific job that I want, which I don't know how I'm going to get there.
Well, we can make a plan.
Yeah.
Is I want to give talks about my autism, while also taking animals of different kinds. So not just dogs or cats, it's like reptiles and insects as well. But keeping them separate so people who are scared of certain animals or allergic to a certain, like, don't have to come into contact with them. And have them as therapy while I'm giving the talk about my autism, and then eventually go into talking about the animals and how to care for them. And like, so it's like all of it, but it's like I don't know how that's all going to fit together. But that's the perfect job that I would want. You know.
So what I like about that is it's very precise. You know exactly where you want to go and what it's going to look like and how it's going to work. So being able to think that way is a very entrepreneurial spirit, as you know, your dad was saying. Your ability to be able to say, actually, I don't conform, I don't want to conform, and this is exactly what I want to do. And Wobbles did the same in the sense that he really wanted to be a chef and work in the hospitality area and things like that. And he really liked the regimented part of it. However, he just couldn't really go with that approach. He needed something different. And like you, he went, you know what? I know what I want to do. I know where I want to go. And he made it happen. Granted, he had people that helped him on his way, his lovely wife and things like that. But there's always a route. Especially, you know, with what your dad was saying, that a lot of entrepreneurs are neurodivergent. I mean, we spoke to Chris Dunning-Walton last week when he was talking about his challenges, and he was diagnosed a lot later. And, you know, he always wondered, well, why do I think this way? Why are things not understandable or happening the way I want them to happen? And he became a very successful business person, having InfoSec People, which was a recruitment agency, and he's now a really big advocate for neurodivergency and disabilities within the workplace, which is exactly the kind of things that you're suggesting, Rhiannon. So I think it's very, very possible.
I think the other thing to say about that is that, again, it's tapping into what is important to you, your passions, but it's also recognizing that, and you do brilliantly. When you've got a time commitment to do the talks you do, for example, you do it and you do it really well, but it's allowing the time afterwards to reset. So I think what I'd reflect back on that is what we've said all the way through this interview. It sounds like other people have said it as well. And I know when we had our panel discussion in the other video that we did, it's about recognizing that if you've only met one autistic person, for example, you only met
One autistic person.
exactly. And it should be about identifying what that individual can bring to the table as much as what the menu is, if you like.
Yeah.
What that person can do as much about what the job is. And if need be, then why not think outside the box? Why not go off and strike off on your own? Nothing wrong with that. Although hopefully you'll still do it with me under the arms rehab banner, because I need a pension when you take over. You got to look after me, all right?
No.
Oh, are you not already pension age? Because it looks like Rhiannon's visited you in your retirement home.
Thank you very much. I think that's just wishful thinking from the family, to be
I
perfectly honest.
think you're right.
Yes.
But Rhiannon, thanks very much for your time today. Mike, as always a pleasure. If you've got any questions or you have any comments to make, you're neurodiverse yourself and you think there's something that we haven't covered over the 2 lessons, please put down in the comments things that you might like to have discussions about. During the premiere, this is going out on Thursday, so we'll be online to be able to answer any questions that you have. And if you put some questions in that's after that, we will absolutely try to get back to you. So thanks very much, everybody, for watching and joining us with these 2 webinars, and we look forward to seeing you on the other side. Bye-bye.